What's going on, guys? It's Adam P. Once again, back with more Newcastle United transfer news. It was a double upload on the channel yesterday. I wasn't expecting to come back out in the evening, but Hugo Ekitike bid was confirmed by Romano and then backed up from all the journalists on social media. Isak would not be going anywhere. Austin this morning came out in Sky Sports and confirmed that if Ekitike was to come in, it would be both Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak playing alongside each other going into this season. And if you guys have been following Eddie Howe throughout his managerial career, he actually played quite a light 4-4-2 at Bournemouth. So you would have played Callum Wilson up front, Joshua King just behind him. And especially with Newcastle's team now, I feel like not just the two strikers, but the out wide options, Elanga, Gordon, Hall, Livramento, the pace, all of those players under the age of 24. These are players that are going to run opposition teams, are going to be a high pressing team. And as far as ambition goes, I think this is as ambitious as it gets now. Of course, we're here in this video to address the news that's came out just before breaking news within the last half an hour. So Newcastle has had a written bid of 80 million euros rejected for Hugo Ekitike. Now, this is £70 million to equivalent to UK money. £70 million, of course, is a record transfer here at Newcastle United, and what is an opening bid. And unlike someone like James Traford, for example, this is not going to be an ongoing transfer saga throughout the summer. This is going to be quick. A couple of days, I reckon 48 hours, 72 hours time, you will know whether we're going to get the player or whether someone else is going to get a player. A massive high in demand, one of the world's best strikers you were talking in terms of technical ability and also potential. This one will not stick around for long, so Newcastle has to be quick. They have been quick, they went straight in there. And what's interesting, what Sky Sports Germany's quoted is that, well, yes, it has been rejected and it's claimed that further teams are going to come into Frankfurt and make offers, but it's been rejected largely due to the payment terms. Now, to try and explain the payment terms, at least my understanding is that payment terms is more so of how the money is distributed. So Newcastle, well, yes, £70 million is down. Bear in mind, Ekitike has an £86 million release clause, so we are £16 million from being guaranteed to bring the player in, unless they decide to do a forest. But the idea of a release clause is that you put the money in, you are guaranteed that player. So Newcastle is £16 million away from the release clause. For example, might be, let's say, £40 million up front. Then all of a sudden the remaining money is either add-ons or it's across multiple years. Frankfurt was more money up front now, which, to be honest, I think is fair enough. I think a lot of teams would go for Ekitike, and while there's no evidence other than Newcastle so far, I feel like, to be fair, in their point of view, I reckon more teams are going to go in for the player. So I can understand why they would want to push more money out of Newcastle. And to be honest, doesn't sound that far away. Now, it's not like a Traford situation where we put £27 million down, Burnley won 40. The release clause is already £16 million away from what Newcastle has put in. So even without the negotiating part of it, Newcastle's quite close to securing this deal. The fact they've dumped, you're talking 80 million euros into the player already. Newcastle clearly want them. I feel especially not just bringing Ekitike in, but it's for your players as well. Of course, Alexander Isak is a player that's going to have lots of links this summer. He's going to have lots of links in future summers to go. A player like him, you sign his Swedish teammate Elanga, you sign a world-class striker to go alongside him, and on top of that, you bring our players in this window. What does that tell him? He's going to stick in Newcastle because he knows that the ambition, while of course the PLF will always say that Newcastle's an ambitious club, based on the last couple of transfer windows, you could understand why perhaps a negative support or maybe someone that isn't the biggest fan of Newcastle, you can understand why they would say that Newcastle's project is not ambitious, but this transfer window completely contradicts that, and it makes sure for players like Isak, we are ambitious and we're going to go fully out next season. And in terms of transfers, it tells a couple of questions as well. We aren't done if we sign like Ekitike. Of course we're not. We still need to sign like to Traford, for example. We still need a backup goalkeeper. Centre half hasn't been addressed. That's a key area for Newcastle. Potentially a centre midfielder in there. That's a big thing as well. Not just potentially bringing Ekitike in, but it's the fact that you're not even done after bringing Ekitike in. For me, this is as big as a sign as you could possibly do in this window. I seriously rate him as a player. I think for what Newcastle's trying to achieve, such a good player to bring in. And of course, playing just behind Isak in potentially a 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 Worst case scenario, if Isak goes next summer, you'll get a ridiculous amount of money in, and Ekitike will have that experience alongside a more proven striker, and then he will be able to lead the line for Newcastle. So it's a perfect sign. I can't stress it enough. You look at partnerships throughout history at Newcastle. In the 90s, of course, Andy Cole, Peter Beardsley back in the Premier League. Then he switched it up to Alan Shearer, Les Ferdinand, and while the following two weren't the best together, but Demba Ba and Patrice Ciccio had some iconic partnerships throughout history. Hugo Ekitike and Alexander Isak has a legitimate possibility of being our next partnership and being a partnership, in my opinion. Again, I'm always fair on Newcastle. Yes, I love this football club, but I'm not biased towards this. I always call it how it is. I think this Newcastle team with Elanga, Ekitike, Scalvani, Traford, if it was those four that came in this window, that, in my opinion, is a team that is good enough to challenge for the league title. I think that team can compete in the Champions League. I think that team is capable of doing incredible things, and you have to look at the players behind this team and the manager behind those players as well. We've got a serious team. Hugo Ekitike gets in most of the world's teams. I know some of you guys watching this video might not have watched an awful amount of him, might not be the biggest fan of him. But I'm telling you now, Hugo Ekitike gets in most teams in this world. He seriously does. He's one of the highest potential strikers out there. Newcastle wanted him 3 years ago. Did not happen at the time. This time they're showing intent. They went back in again. This deal, if Newcastle is to pull it off, will happen quickly. 48 hours, 72 hours. And on top of that, they give you further examples. So super agent Ali Barat was reported to be in Newcastle yesterday to finalise the Hugo Ekitike deal. Of course, we talk about the 80 million euros bid. Pete Graves, of course, Newcastle fan who works at Sky Sports, actually replied to it with the eye emoji. Again, I don't know personally in his point of view what he's saying from that, but it suggests to me that he fully believes and he's reckon there is something to that quote that came out. So again, keep in touch, stay on social media. It was going to happen quick. We'll either lose him or we'll get him within a couple of days. I seriously feel like this is going to be a big transfer. It's just going to happen or not happen immediately. I think it'll be quite quick. But of course, not just about Hugo Ekitike. We could spend the entire video talking about him, but ultimately, Newcastle are not going to be finished with just the one sign. And of course, we mentioned James Traford yesterday, and we spoke about the possibility of him not travelling to Portugal. Nowhere to be seen anywhere on Burnley's social media posts. Now, there was a video that was posted last evening where it showed Burnley doing little training sessions, and you can see glimpses of James Traford with the squad in Portugal. I mean, when I mean glimpses, you're talking barely on camera. The media team intentionally not showing him at all, not focused on him. There's little background shots where you can kind of just see the silhouette of the guy. Now, again, I mentioned the possibility in the video yesterday. The fact that the media team at Burnley is purposely not looking at one of their best players, not highlighting one of their best players, potentially is setting up their fans to look at the possibility of him leaving soon. And the reality is, again, when you look at the evidence, Newcastle clearly want him. They're still going in for Traford, and while it has been a saga that's dragged on for over a year now, Newcastle hasn't left that discussion, and it's a player that we know Newcastle will go back in for again. So that one still seems closer than what might be suggested in social media. That one seems possible. And again, while you look at Newcastle's transfer history so far this summer, it seems to be kind of going in for one player at a time, but the club, of course, can operate getting more than one player at a time. But especially Hugo Ekitike, I think that one's going to slow down potentially any other transfers for a few days. But again, after this weekend in Celtic, when we're about to jet out to Asia, that's when I think Newcastle will start to look elsewhere at different players. Now, going away from that, we've had a pink kit leaked on social media that has been confirmed to be the goalkeeper kit going into this season. Now, I'm never one, right, to wear goalkeeper tops. The yellow one looks nice. This one looks nice as well, the pink top. But the only thing is, I just wouldn't go to a football match wearing a goalkeeper shirt. Now, I have, on a couple of exceptions 6 years ago or so, had the orange Timebridge Classic 97 goalkeeper top. Wore that one a couple of times. But other than that, I never tend to wear goalkeeper tops. And it's a shame because look how nice those kits are. I kind of wish that was our new away kit rather than that Saudi green one. I'd rather wear that, even though, of course, some of you guys might not be the biggest fan of pink, but I actually like that kit. I think it's quite good. And finally, walking away from this video, we're mentioning the Athletic again from yesterday. They are adamant that Newcastle is planning to sell none of their key players in this summer window. Again, no Isak, no Tonali, no Livramento, no Gordon. All of them are going to be staying at Newcastle. And you have to give props to Newcastle on our ownership because, well, I think when you look at any team in world football, keeping a hold of your big players, especially in an active and hectic transfer market like this. Newcastle, since the takeover, haven't lost any key players. All of our key players that we sought have all been sorted at the correct time. And I think our worst blow is the Minter and Anderson situation, where again, considering the fact that we nearly had a points deduction for that, selling those two in the grand scheme of things hasn't affected much. Anderson wouldn't have played for Newcastle as much as we love the guy. Minter is probably the biggest blow, but again, Jacob Murphy's then stepped in, and look how good he's been. So that's probably our worst blow in terms of sales since the takeover. And even then, that was more of our mistake and them falling on this FFP trap rather than Newcastle selling them to someone else. They get to happen because of a mistake we made. So when you look at our transfers and when you look at keeping hold of our best players, Newcastle's been superb and spot on at doing it. And again, when you look at bringing the likes of Hugo Ekitike in, the team we've got now has already been good enough to win silverware and secure Champions League football. So just imagine when you have the squad depth sorted, when you are able, especially for Eddie Howe and this attack. I feel like if you could criticise Newcastle for anything over the past couple of seasons, well, not being Eddie Howe's fault because we haven't been able to spend anything, but it's been the same attack for 2 years, so we've become somewhat predictable at times. And I think towards the back end of last season, teams started to catch Newcastle out somewhat of our attack because, of course, you're used to playing the same system against the same teams. So, of course, those teams then walk away, learn from it, and come back better against Newcastle. When you got the chance now of completely changing the formation, you've got two striker options, of course. If you wanted then to change formation again, have Joe Linton in against some of the more tougher teams in the league, you've got some serious options to work around with, and it makes Newcastle quite a dynamic and exciting team. We are already exciting to watch, but Eddie Howe has the real possibility of just doing exactly what he wants in the match. He can change, he can look at options, and while I don't want to quote the Athletic in this one, because I hope we don't get him, but even here, Dominic CalvertLewin is still a possibility of coming in Newcastle in the free agent. Now, let me ask you a question. Would you take Dominic Calvert-Lewin on the bench to sit alongside William Usula if it meant Isak and Ekitike started for you and somehow this guy's also came in as well? I think he's good depth. I actually think if you had him and Usula on the bench, you got the option there in the 4-4-2. Newcastle are going to move around, get Scalfoni and get Traford and maybe potentially a centre midfielder. And even then, I still think on a free option, like you've got cover to deal with. Newcastle's just going to have a lot of players to work with next season. And while admittedly, I hope we probably don't get him. I have to give you an answer now. If you had Ekitike and you had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I would certainly say yes to that. But Newcastle just need to iron things out, get the deals they want to get done sorted. But again, I don't want to kind of come out in this video and just blow smoke up your backside, but I think this team is good enough for challenge for a league title. You got to look at the teams around us. Liverpool's attack's good, City's attack's good, Chelsea's attack's good, Arsenal's attack's good, but Newcastle have a real corner team now, and they've got a lot of players that have been together for a long period of time now. And even last season, Newcastle finished fifth. They won the last couple of games. They could have finished second. If they won at the Emirates and beat Arsenal and then won against Everton, they would have finished second in the league too, which is mental when you put it that way, because especially first half of the season, Newcastle dropped an incredible amount of points and just looked a bit lacklustre at times. So the fact that Newcastle was probably about that close for finishing second last season, that's even with a team full of bare bones that we've had for 2 years. Imagine with an actual transfer window where you actually brung some serious level talent players in. Newcastle has a team there that can work for things, and I feel like we will do that next season. But Champions League football every single season's a priority. Of course, keeping your big players at the football club by showing them the ambition of this club by bringing even more big players in is certainly going to set us up for a very successful long period of time at this football club. So take care. Let me know your opinions down below. Ekitike looks good, even with a rejected bid. The reports look good in them. So let's see how it goes. Take care, and we will see you all in the next one.